Hello and welcome to EPISD Live Chats. I'm Melissa Martinez, Chief Communications Officer for the El Paso Independent School District, and I am joined once again by Dr. Tamika Brown, our Chief Academic Officer. What kind of feedback have we heard from our first week and a half of remote learning?
By and large, we've had really positive feedback from our campuses, from our teachers, from parents. And so, you know, we believe that the plan that we created is a solid plan. We have gotten some feedback, particularly from elementary, that it's particularly elementary early ages like pre-K, kinder, first, that the schedule is a little overwhelming for those early learners.
Okay, so from that feedback, overwhelming what are we hearing exactly about?
Specifically, what we're hearing is that it's a lot of time on the computer, and it's overwhelming for little kids to be on the computer for that amount of time. And so, and ideally, as we've shared in the past, you know, our earliest learners really need to be face to face. That's the best setting for the early childhood group of students, pre-K, kinder, first, and second. But in this pandemic, you know, we had to create other options, and so, but we are going to be responsive to our families that are concerned about the amount of screen time.
So let's take a step back, and certainly we've said from the start, nobody disagrees that in-person on campus is the better option, but because of the circumstances, we are where we are. But let's step back and remind parents why the difference between this schedule and the one we had in the spring. So what are the new requirements in place for us from the Texas Education Agency that weren't in place in the spring?
So if you guys will recall, back in the spring, students only connected with teachers for 30 minutes, and it was about 3 times a week that they were connecting with their teachers. Well, that's not, if you think about the scope of the curriculum that students learn in a year, connecting for 30 minutes 3 times a week is not sufficient. It's not enough time to ensure that the students learn and master the standards that they're required to master. We have developed some plans to ensure we incorporate some essential standards from the fourth quarter to make sure that students did not get any gaps, but we know that it's inevitable, right? Because we were not able to spend that amount of time. And TEA has asked every district to, as best we can, to replicate what a student would experience in a typical school day. So we have tried to replicate a schedule while keeping in mind those best practices about being in front of a screen. Simultaneously, we have tried to ensure that we have prioritized face-to-face instruction for the early learners as soon as we're back in the building.
Okay, so really important to note that some of the allowances and dispensations, if you will, that we were given from the state in the spring because of the crisis situation are no longer in place. So essentially we're back to school as normal as far as the requirements for instructional minutes, and so that's where we have this new schedule. So one of the comments we're seeing from parents is to your point, we've tried to replicate a school day. So in a school day you would have teaching and learning, you would do some work, but then you also go home with some homework. So the difference is now we're always at home, so it feels like that work is extended. So some of the questions from parents are, why that additional work? So after your normal school day work, why do we still have homework?
Right. So if you think about the time that a student spends learning, if we were in the brick and mortar building, they would have homework. And there's different research out there about, you know, the impact or the effectiveness of homework. But essentially, if we were in the brick and mortar building, students would have homework. And so it may be for some content areas, for some grade levels, that there is an extension warranted, which means that there is a need for students to do a little bit of additional work beyond the school day. And so therefore, you're going to have teachers that have to assign work that expands beyond what we are considering the school day, just like they would in the brick and mortar setting.
So again, it's real school, as we've been saying,
Yeah.
right? And we have to get back to as best possible, because the other big question is STAR has not been waived, correct?
That's
so we
correct.
have to prepare our kids for instruction, regular instruction. We want them to advance in their academics, but also STAR's coming up. As far as we know right now, there has been no allowances for that.
That's absolutely right. And we know that our teachers are working so hard, our students are working so hard, parents, you're working so hard. And, you know, we don't want this to be just a situation that you just cannot manage. That's not our intent. We do want to provide quality instruction to our students. We do want our teachers to have access to be able to provide instruction so that our students can learn at high levels, and at the end of the year, we can show evidence that our students have learned at high levels. Now, that said, I do want you to think about, you know, back in the spring, our teachers did show us that they did not need a standardized test to perform. And our teachers were resilient, they were connected, and we're so proud of the work that they did, and we want to, you know, help them by ensuring that they can continue to support our students with the schedule.
Let's break it down to elementary level.
Okay.
So what are our requirements for live instruction, screen time per se, for teachers and students?
So if you break down the schedule, elementary students, of course the schedule is still, you know, the 8:15 or 8:25 until the 3:15. Or 3:25, depending on the campus. And then they have all of the different content areas broken up throughout the day, 90 minutes of English language arts and reading, Spanish language arts and reading. They have the blocks of time for mathematics and science and PE. And so what we've done within each of those blocks is we have separated the time. So as an example, for English language arts and reading, it may be a 90-minute block of time for that content, but within that 90 minutes, we've broken up the blocks of time. So there may be some whole group instruction where you would see your child connecting live through Zoom or through WebEx or some video conferencing tool where they're actually connecting with the teacher. But after that 20 minutes, the teacher may send them to do some work independently, and this is where they get that break away from the screen. So they would have just a few minutes, or it may be 15, 20 minutes in the schedule. It's about 20, 25 minutes where they work independently, not necessarily on the screen, to complete assignments. And then that last block of time is where the students come back and they reconnect with the teacher to check for understanding. One of the reasons we're doing that is because one of the things that parents shared with us back in the spring is that I don't want to be the teacher, right? I don't want to be expected to teach my child. So one of the reasons we have that the students are going back in with the teacher in the same content block is so that the teacher can check for understanding and the parents are not responsible for doing that work.
Okay, so we have had reports. You've explained what our requirements as a district, what we've set forth for teachers. And there have been some reports, and we reiterate, we're a week and a half in. But for those instances in which parents are saying that it is more time than what we have outlined on the schedule, what are we doing to address those instances?
We are working directly with our teachers to help them understand the flexibility that they have. While we have created a schedule that ensures that learning is taking place all day, that does not necessarily mean a child needs to be in front of a computer for the whole day. So we're being very intentional. We appreciate your feedback. We understand that this can be a very daunting task. This is not the way school works in general. So we're trying to make lemonade out of the lemons that we've had to encounter. However, we are giving our teachers the flexibility to manage that 90 minutes. And what I mean by that, I gave you the schedule that we published, 20, 25 minutes, and then like 10 or 15 minutes to come back and check for understanding. Our teachers have the flexibility to modify that 90 minutes even more so. An example would be they connect for 15 minutes. They give the students 25 minutes to do work. They come back. They would connect for an additional 10 or 15 minutes, and then they allow students to do additional work. They come back. So I think it's important for us to to understand that, the teachers are working very hard, and they do want to be responsive to your needs as parents, and they are going to, we are sharing with them different ways to be flexible with the schedules that they have.
Okay, I want to clarify something that people are asking about in the comments. To our statement about STAR testing has not been waived. However, Governor Abbott did waive the requirement to pass the STAR testing in the spring in order to be promoted, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's where we want to make the difference. So it's no longer required, or they waived that requirement in order to be promoted to the next grade, but we're still going to have to take the test this school year.
Correct. That's
Okay.
specific to 5th and 8th grade SSI. A student, pre-COVID, a student has to take and pass the 5th and 8th grade exam in order to be promoted, right? That was actually a condition of promotion. And so what the comments are related to is Governor Abbott has waived that as a requirement for retention and promotion. What he's saying is that if a student is successful, that you can have other ways to determine if a student is ready to move on to the next grade level.
Which has always been the case, correct?
Yes,
We've always
yes,
had
yes.
different ways of monitoring and assessing if a student can be promoted.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit to those working parents as well, because attendance is still a big question.
Yes.
If I'm not able to log in live, is it going to be counted against me? We know that some families have their children in childcare during the day, perhaps at a center that it isn't going to be as conducive for them to log on when they need to. So how are we accommodating those schedules?
Okay, and I know that attendance is a big question, and I want to share that we have two reasons for taking attendance. We have attendance that's taken to capture funding. This is how we manage the district. This is how we pay salaries. This is how we buy instructional resources. But we also have attendance for the purposes of learning and for assigning credit and for a course. So when we're talking about the day-to-day schedule, it's really important that students connect when learning is taking place. And so therefore, you're going to have your teachers that say, I really need, your child to connect when I'm providing that instruction. I really need your child to connect when we're helping them to understand the standard that we need them to master. Now, that said, if a child cannot connect, if for whatever reason you have circumstances that will not allow a student to connect live during the instruction, that communication with the teacher is going to be critical. Communicating with the teacher, the student communicating with the teacher, making sure that if the teacher has assigned work in Schoology, that the student completes the work, making sure that if there is a discussion that the student has to respond to, that the student responds to the discussion, and there is that opportunity to show that they have been engaged in learning for that day, even if they were not able to access the live video conference when the teacher was on.
Okay, so that also helps parents understand. There's, parents obviously have done a lot of their homework as well and are looking at the sites to see what are the different options from TEA. And so some are saying, well, some districts are doing completely self-paced type of schedules. There's a synchronous, asynchronous. We've chosen asynchronous. So can you explain what that means to parents and students and our requirements for the plan?
Mm-hmm. So, and I do want to explain that, because you're correct. There are some districts that are what we're considering completely online, right? The teacher and the students never have that opportunity to interact. The students are put onto a program, and the students are to stay on that program, and that is their learning. Now, that's not best practice, right? And that is not the way students learn best at any level, whether it's pre-K or 12th grade. Just like humans need that interaction, our students also need interaction. And if you would actually look at the recommendations from TEA, they actually state that even in an asynchronous plan, it's actually recommended that you have synchronous touch points. And synchronous just means live interactions between the teacher and the student. So even though it's asynchronous, there's a recommendation that we have synchronous touch points or opportunities for the students to directly connect to the teacher, because that's best practice. And so we have designed a schedule where we have both asynchronous, where the students are working independently and able to complete work without being directly in front of the teacher, but we also have synchronous touch points because we know that that is best practice, and we know that that is going to help our students master the content that we really need them to master.
And this was developed after much feedback from the spring. Certainly in the spring, we heard from parents that it wasn't enough, correct? We needed more engagement for sure. And so it's always going to be a tricky thing to find that balance, but we're working on it, right? Again, we're a week and a half in, so we always want to remind people. And with any plan, you set forth and then you fine tune it. So we're listening to that feedback, and certainly making the adjustments as we need, but we certainly want to stress that flexibility that's there for parents and for students. It's certainly not our intention for them to be in front of a computer all day.
That's correct.
By any means. So if my child needs to take a break, and isn't going to log in live for that afternoon session, but they're still doing their work, is that okay?
That's absolutely okay. I think that, that's where the relationship is going to be critical between the family and the teacher. I had a family that reached out last week, and their daughter had a headache and she just needed to disconnect in the afternoon. That family reached out to the teacher worked it out. And so because of that relationship and because of the communication, everything was fine with the student. And so that's where that communication is going to be key. I know it's stressful, but it's absolutely critical that we have that open communication. What we're doing to support you families is we are publishing like a peek at a week. You should, at this point, have seen on your child's Schoology page a graphic or a table that's a peek at the week that identifies over the course of the week at a glance what is going to be happening with the teacher, and whether you're talking about one teacher in early childhood, two teachers for the upper elementary, or multiple teachers at the secondary level, you should still see that peek at the week as a consistent table across all of the content areas that identifies this is what's happening for this particular class over the course of the week. And that's like a tool that can help you with the communication, like to help you reach out to the parent and say, or to the teacher to say, hey, I can't connect Tuesday afternoon. I see this is what you have my child responsible for. Can we work out a way for them to do it without connecting? Okay,
so that's a great segue to explain what are the different ways that we mark attendance and participation, because that's certainly that peak of the week gives you all the activities and kind of tells you also what you're going to be counted on, what you're graded on, what a teacher's looking for, not only that day for the week. So how are we marking attendance and participation?
So we're marking attendance. So if a teacher has a live video conference, that teacher can immediately take attendance and identify whether or not a student is present for the day. So that's one way to mark attendance. Another way to mark attendance is if they have assigned an asynchronous activity, meaning an activity that a student does on their own or in a small group with students outside of the live video conference. When the student completes the assignment, or when the student shows progress, right? They have, completed a significant amount of the assignment to get credit, then that teacher can give that student credit for being present for the day. It's important to remember that EIA, our grading policy, is back in the pre-COVID EIA grading policy is back in place. And so there has to be an opportunity for teachers to check for understanding. There has to be an opportunity for teachers to assess whether students are learning. And that comes in the form of work and tests. And that all happens on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't just happen like 3 weeks down the road. And so those grades, they have to 2 grades per week per content in elementary. And then at the secondary level, it's 12 grades for the whole quarter or for the whole 9 weeks. So every teacher is responsible for making those assurances. So we have to make sure they have access to students, make sure they're able to teach our students so that they can support them.
Okay, so one of those things you mentioned earlier is for that parent, for instance, that child had a headache, communicated with the teacher. So that's something that's a little bit new, and there's a nuance to that since we're at home. A lot of confusion is, what do I do if I have to miss a session, a period, a course? Do I have to call it in? And we do have a little bit of allowances with that as well, as you mentioned, correct? So how, if for whatever reason you have to miss a session, what do you do?
I think the first thing you do is communicate directly with the teacher, right? Communicate directly with the teacher to make sure there is an opportunity for the student to show progress or for the student to complete an assignment. If they are able to show progress, if they're able to complete the assignment, they will still be marked present, okay? I want to reiterate that that's not ideal, right? We want our students to connect with the teachers. However, that option is there. We ask that you communicate directly with the teachers to ensure that, that we are able to put the right circumstances in place, the right conditions in place for the teacher to make the assignment, for the student to get the assignment turned in, and for the student to be marked present.
Okay, we've talked a lot about elementary because certainly that's where I think we're getting the most feedback about the schedule since it's harder. Again, our secondary, middle school, or high schools, they do better both independently and with their technology. So, but we do have some high school questions, secondary questions. Okay. Wednesday on the secondary schedule is an asynchronous day. So can you talk about that and what the requirements still are as far as participation and attendance?
So, you know, one of the comments from an earlier family was, you know, some districts have asynchronous, you know, every day, all day, the students never have to connect. Well, that's our Wednesday schedule. However, there's a caveat. On Tuesdays, right, based on grades, based on student attendance, based on progress in terms of learning, the teachers are going to identify small groups that need additional support. Those simultaneously, they're going to also identify students that have the opportunity to accelerate, right? Because the students are on pace and they may need additional support to move faster. So what the teachers are doing on Tuesday is they are snapshotting where they are, they're identifying how they're going to manage their small groups, they're developing an asynchronous plan for Wednesday, and on Wednesday, they're specifically connecting with small groups, okay? Now, for the students that have to connect in a small group, they have a specific time. They're going to connect with their teachers, and they're going to get either that support, the remediation, or that acceleration from the teacher. Now, that said, for every other student that may or may not, let's say may not, for every other student that's not connecting, there is a plan for learning for them that day. That's an asynchronous plan that the teacher will have communicated both on Monday at the peak of the week and simultaneously on Tuesday to make sure that the students on Wednesday, if they're not connecting in a small group, can complete the work and show that they have made progress, completed an assignment, and can be marked present.
Okay, so comments coming in, of course.
Okay.
Of what we've been talking about, and I just want to reiterate, and so they can hear it from you again. We are working on those instances. We still have parents saying, my child is logged in all day. So that shouldn't be happening according to the plans we've set forth, but we know it's an adjustment, and
Yes.
It's certainly not anything that's being done out of the norm, but it's really more of an adjustment in finding that balance.
That's correct. Our teachers are not doing it in a malicious way. You know, our teachers really want to do what's best for their students, and they really want to have high expectations. And so their intentions are not to make life difficult for the students. And I think that with our help clarifying how they can exercise some flexibility, I think that they will eventually get to that point. For those, and I know that it's just, a few of our teachers that may, be a little anxious about not having that connection. And we are making sure they understand that they do have that flexibility. They do have ways to connect without, and make sure kids are learning without being online all day, every day.
And it is certainly going to be challenging for all of our teachers and students who are used to instruction in the classroom, being with their students all day long, working on those subjects. It's a big adjustment. I can imagine with now, you're not only not in front of your kiddos physically, but you're still having to manage how to provide instruction to your students when you also don't want to load them on the computer all day long. But how do I teach you if I can't talk to you or see you, right?
That's correct.
That's, I know, is certainly an adjustment, and thank you to all the parents commenting of the communication and flexibility and positive notes out there. We truly appreciate them, because we know they're not always, they're few and far between sometimes, but we're working on it. We're trying, everybody's doing the best that they can, and certainly working on the feedback that we're getting.
Yes.
Okay, we have some technology questions on here, and our best thing is to contact our help desk when you have issues with technology. There's technology forms you can fill out online to get any device issues corrected, repairs, etc. Our best place is start with your teacher if you have issues with the apps that are being used, or call our help desk. We can post our help desk number online, as well as a link to that form. We'll post it in the comments so that you can see that. Any other questions, again, you can reach out to us directly. We always say, start with your teacher. They're going to be able to address that. You can go with the principal, and you certainly have Dr. Brown and myself to reach out to with any questions, or on Facebook you can post that. Dr. Brown, any last words that you would like to offer of encouragement, comfort?
Yes, be patient with yourself. I shared when we spoke a couple of weeks ago that this pandemic has really pulled the rug from all of us. We have definitely taken all of the feedback that we received in the spring and developed a plan that we really believe is in the best interest of our students. We acknowledge that it is a challenge for everyone involved, but we are here to support you families. I want you to know that everyone involved is here to support you. And I also want you to know that I have elementary age children. Several people on the team have elementary age children, middle school age children, high school age children. So we are in this with you as parents also. And so we're able to see firsthand, what this is like, and help us to make decisions that will help us to get better and better and better. So we're in this together, and I do want you to know that our role and our job is to support you, support our students, and we are definitely here to do that.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Once again, parents, families, thank you for joining us today. We will continue to respond to your feedback. Please keep those questions, comments coming in, because I'm sure I will be seeing Dr. Brown soon, and sooner than later we'll do another chat. So please, again, keep those communication lines open, so that we can help you as best we can. We can address any questions. The chat, again, Facebook, social media, through our websites, Let's Talk. Lots of ways you can communicate with us. So until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you.